all the stories of the Bible. The Rock. 201. The story of Jesus. Now hear the story. The story of Jesus. As told by Peter, later written down by Mark, the scribe. This is the story, first person, told through one of Jesus' great disciples, one who saw it closely, one who knows it best, as it may have been heard by the very first people of the church. Isaiah had written, "Look, I'm sending you my messenger, the voice of one crying in the wilderness." And John appeared in the wild lands, baptizing. He wore camel's hair, and he had a leather belt. And he said, "Someone mighty is on the way, someone who baptizes not with water, but with the Spirit." And Jesus came. When Jesus was being baptized by John, he came up out of the water, and he looked up, and he saw the heavens rended, and the Spirit came down upon him. And a voice said, "You are my beloved Son. With you I am pleased." And the Spirit which had come upon him immediately drove him into the wilderness for 40 days. And there he was tempted by Satan, there with the wild animals. But when Jesus returned, John had already been incarcerated, and Jesus started preaching, "It is time. The kingdom is here. So turn and trust my words." And he picked up me and Andrew while we were casting nets, for we had always been fishermen. But Jesus said to us, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So we did. And there were 2 other brothers, James and John, and they joined us, and together we went right to Capernaum. And the rabbi began teaching. But he wasn't like the other teachers. He had authority. For example, there was a man who leapt up with an evil spirit, and he said, "I know who you are, Jesus of Nazareth. You are the Holy One." But Jesus cast it out. And because of things like this, Jesus became famous, and yet accessible. When he was at our home, my mother-in-law had a fever, but he took her by the hand, and the fever left her. And people were coming to our home with all their sick. Suddenly, our home became like a government office of our city, with throngs of people surrounding it. But Jesus, he healed them all day. And we had told everyone to spend the night there, but the next morning, he was gone. We looked all over for Jesus, and we finally found him praying over the ridge in the desert area. But he just said to us, "Let's go to some other towns. I need to preach," he said. "That's what I'm here for." Now there was a leprous man who came and found us while we were traveling, and he said, "You can clean me if you wish." And Jesus looked at him, and he was moved, so deeply moved. So he went up to that man, and he touched him with his hand, and he said, "I do wish this. Be clean." And the man was clean. But Jesus told him, "Keep this a secret. Go right to the priest, for it was written by Moses what you should do." However, the man, he went and told everyone, to the point where we had to change everything, going out to the desert like John did, and letting the people come to us. Now Jesus did eventually come back to Capernaum, and back to the home, and it was packed. But there were these 4 men who brought a crippled friend, and they pulled our roof apart in order to let him down to the roof. But Jesus, he wasn't mad. He just said, "Son, your sins are forgiven." But there were scribes in the room, and Jesus sensed their alarm, and he said to them, he looked at them and he said, "I know your thoughts. Why is this so controversial? Is it easier to say this, or just to simply say, get up and walk? But to verify that the Son of Man will have this power, then listen. Son, get up. Come on, get up. Walk. And then the man, he got up right away. And the people said to one another, we've never seen anything like this before. We were later joined by a tax collector, Levi. Jesus just said to him, follow me. And he did. But when Jesus started spending time with his friends, the scribes, they voiced their disapproval. They said, why are you doing this? And he said, is it not the sick who need a doctor? I came for sinners, not the cured. And even John's followers didn't get it. They said, why don't you do all the ritual fasting? But Jesus said, would you fast on a wedding day? But there is a day coming when the groom shall be snatched away. Then they will fast. Fasting now would be like patching up a new garment as though it were old, like putting fresh wine in an old container. Now Jesus took us out into the fields on Sabbath days, and we would pluck the grain. But even for this was he attacked. He would just say to the people who attacked him, did not David eat holy bread when he was on the run? It's all about authority. For the Son of Man, like David, is destined to rule, even over the Sabbath. In the synagogue, Jesus saw a man who had a withered hand. Eating grain was one thing. What would he do with this? He just said, come up here, boy. What's better? He said to everyone. Someone answer me. What's better? To heal on the Sabbath day or to do harm? Well, who was going to answer that? So, grieved at their hearts, for no one would answer him, Jesus said, give me your hand, son. And the boy with the withered hand, it was restored, completely restored. But if there was a line, that was it. And Jesus had crossed it. We got out of there, and we made for Jerusalem, and even up to the places like Tyre and Sidon. So many people came, we had to teach them from a boat. But when evil spirits shouted through people that they had inhabited, people in the crowd, Jesus could drive them out, even from a distance. He seemed especially concerned that these spirits would reveal who he was too early. Jesus took us to a mountain one day, and he organized us, calling us the 12. And he sent us in pairs on our own little excursions. But he went home for a while. And even his family said, he's crazy! And they tried to lock him up. The more important scribes started teaching about him. They were saying things like, this man who's traveling, he uses demonic powers. Oh, how he was angry at this. Jesus would preach. He even preached a special message about it. How can Satan cast himself out? A divided kingdom can never stand. If Satan is attacking his own instruments, he's already doomed. If you wish to enter a wicked house, bind the strong ones in the house. Take out the stakeholders, then you can plunder freely. Listen truly. Don't speak against the Spirit. You'll find yourself outside of the realm of forgiveness. Again, Jesus' mother and brothers came, and they were trying to cajole him out, saying, we're here, come and see us. But Jesus just said to everybody, you want to know who my family is? It's people on mission. Look around at these. This is my family. Jesus said, listen, a man sowed seed, and some fell on the road, but the birds grabbed it. Some fell among rocks, but the sun scorched it. And some fell among thorns that choked it. But some fell just right, and it multiplied and grew 30 times, 60 times, even 100. Whoever has ears, hear it. Jesus always talked like this. But later, when we were all together in the evenings, he would tell us what it meant. I use parables, he said, so they don't get it right away. They should seek out their healing. So, none of you know this one, do you? If you can't get this one, there's no hope for you. So on the path are the ones who hear the sermon, but Satan comes and grabs the word away from them. The rocks are like the troubles of this world. They start off all right, growing a little bit, but it just proves to be too distracting. The thorns are more like the pleasures, the riches and desires, so they grow up quite a bit. But these things choke it out when it really comes to living the word out. There are a few, though, that will truly flourish. So who puts a lamp under a basket? Pay attention to all these teachings, for you are meant to use them, to glean more, for this kingdom really is like seed. You put a mustard seed in the ground. Look how small it is. Who would ever think that it would ever provide shade for birds like these? So that evening, Jesus told us, when it was starting to get dark, let's cross the lake. And so we took him just as he was. But a storm came out of nowhere. It was out of our league. It was big. But Jesus was sleeping. We woke him up and said, "Teacher, do our lives not matter to you?" But he snapped at the seas and said, "Quiet." And it all died down. Jesus just said, "Why are you so afraid? Do you not trust me?" But we all said to one another, "Who is this man?" When we got there, there was a man who had become a monster. They had kept him chained, but he had just broken the chains like they were nothing. He ruled up in the grave areas, and nobody would dare to go there. But that man, all mangled and scary, he approached us, and he walked up to Jesus, and he said, "What do you have with us, Jesus, Son of the Most High?" And Jesus just said, "What is your name?" And the man said, "Legion, for we are many." But they were in retreat. They begged for the right to enter the herd of pigs nearby, and Jesus allowed it. And it caused a rumbling. The whole herd charged off a cliff and drowned in the lake. The whole town came out, angry, though the man was perfectly healed. But they told us all to leave. And the man wanted to come with Jesus. But Jesus said, "No, go and tell the people, show these people what has happened to you." And that man from that day on had this amazing ministry in the 10 cities, the Decapolis. So we all had to travel all the way back that night. And as the night fell, we came into town, and this high-ranking teacher named Jairus, he fell down in front of Jesus, and he begged him to come and heal his 12-year-old daughter. "She's dying. Just touch her, and I know she'll live." So we're on the way, and a woman who had been bleeding nonstop for 12 years slipped up to Jesus and touched his cloak. And Jesus felt this surge of power just going out of him. He turned around and he said, "Who touched me?" And the scene was ridiculous because there were all these people pressed up against us. And he asked, "Who touched me?" And everyone just kind of jumped back. And the woman was there trembling. And she knew that he was looking at her. She explained that she had spent everything she had on doctors. And she didn't even know what to do. And Jesus, he just smiled at her and he said, "Precious daughter, you are whole because of your belief. Now go and walk in wholeness and be healed." But the mood of that moment was shattered by a couple of messengers. "She's dead," they said, talking about Jairus' daughter. "Let him go home. Don't bother him anymore." Well, thankfully, Jesus heard them. He said to them, "Don't worry. Take me there. It'll be okay." But he only let me and James and John into the room with him. And there were all these people wailing. And Jesus said to them, "Stop this. She's just sleeping." He took us all in with her parents. And he took her cold little hand. And he said to her, "Talitha cum." It means, "Get up, darling." And the little girl opened her eyes. And she got up. And Jesus said to us and the parents, "Don't tell them this whole story." About the people downstairs, he meant. Now Jesus tried going back home again, but they were so skeptical that he ended up just walking out on them. A prophet is always esteemed, he said, except in his own hometown. He sent us on mission again, saying, if they don't receive you, just keep on moving. Someone will. He didn't let us travel in comfort. He didn't let us bring anything. We had to rely on the people we were going to see. But we were able to heal them wherever we went. Now, King Herod even heard about Jesus. He thought that John the Baptizer had perhaps been raised, for he himself had had him beheaded at a party. Now, it was quite out of his control. His wife's daughter had tricked him into it, and I think he had hoped for his return, or perhaps feared it. Now, when we came back to Jesus, we were on a high, and Jesus said, let's all go now and rest a while. For none of us had even had time to eat, we were so busy. We took a boat across to what we thought was a secret, restful place. But when we got there were people who had traveled from all over the place. And they were always just one step ahead of us. But Jesus, he would never turn them away. He just said, these are sheep without a shepherd. And he taught them all day. We told Jesus, it's getting late. They need to eat. And Jesus just said, well, feed them then. And we said, feed them? None of us have that kind of money. Well, what do you have? Go and find out, said Jesus. So we came up with 5 pieces of bread and a couple fish. And Jesus set everyone down in 50s. And he blessed the bread. And he gave our meal to the whole group, 5,000 men. And everyone left full. And we each had a basket for ourselves. We left early that next day, and it was in the middle of the night that one of us looked out on the sea, for we'd left Jesus back praying on the mountain. And there was Jesus. One of us looked out and we saw his garment shining in the moonlight, and he was walking toward us. On the water he was walking, and he was starting to pass by. But I think he heard us screaming. He just said, don't worry, it is me. Just me. Just me. The water was choppy, but when he got into the boat, the winds died out. It's like we didn't even get it when he fed the masses of people. Now, for a rabbi, Jesus was pretty casual. The Pharisees were always bugged by that. They said, why don't you do things properly? And Jesus said, Isaiah was right, wasn't he? These people honor me with their lips, but not their heart. They love their man-made rules. And so do you. Jesus said, you're all good at trading real laws for fake ones. Moses said, honor your father and mother. But you say, just put this gift in the name of your father and mother in the offering box instead. And then you don't even encourage them at all to help their parents. You always do this kind of stuff. Jesus said to everyone, listen, everyone. Nothing makes you unclean. Just what comes out of you does. Now, when we were in the house, we said to Jesus, Jesus, what are these things you're saying? Oh, you don't understand either, do you? You eat the food, but it comes right back out of you. So what Jesus was really saying was that we could eat whatever we wanted. And he said, everything wicked like adultery and murder, it comes out of a ruined heart. We went back to Sidon, and we tried to slip in unnoticed. But this foreign woman came and found us. She was from Syrophoenicia. And he told her, sorry, we can't give food to the puppies till the children have eaten. But she said, okay, but even the dogs get the leftovers from the children's table. Jesus said, you get it. Go on. I've already healed her. And he had. Now, when we came back, there was this guy who was both deaf and mute. And Jesus healed him by spitting into his hand, and he put it onto the man's tongue. And then he held his fingers over his ears, and he looked up, and he kind of sighed, and he said, Ephata. And the man was healed of both. Now this was a big deal because Jesus had done what was perceived to be impossible. And the people said, "He has done all things well." That's what was said of him. Now Jesus multiplied the loaves again, as if the first time was not enough. This time it was in a Gentile territory, and there were 4,000 people. It was on the way to Dalmanthua. Now we'd forgotten to bring leftovers with us from that time, and we were on the way, and Jesus said to us, "Watch out for those yeasty teachings of Herod and the temple teachers." Now we were worried. We thought it was some kind of cryptic thing about our mistake that we had made. But Jesus just said, "The first time, how many baskets of leftovers did you get?" 12. And the second? 7. You don't get it, do you? Now we were in Bethsaida, and this blind man came up to us, and Jesus stopped everything. And he just led the man all the way out of town. And then he took some mud, and he spit in it, and he smeared it on the man's eyes. And he said, "You see anything?" And the man said, I see movement, like people walking around, and they look like trees." So Jesus took some more mud, and he spit in it, and he did it again. And then everything was good. But he said, "Don't even go back to the village." So we got out of there too, and we were hiding out in Caesarea Philippi. And Jesus said to us, "So what are the people saying? About me, I mean." "Well, I heard someone say you were John the Baptist." Someone else said, "Elijah, or maybe one of the prophets, they say." But Jesus said, "You?" And at that moment, I spoke up. I said, "You're the prophet. You're the one." And he didn't say no. He just said for us to keep it to ourselves. And he was saying all these things about suffering and giving himself up to be tortured. And I said, a little later, "You've got to stop this nonsense." But he called me Satan. Jesus just said, "You don't have God's plan in mind. You're thinking like a mortal." And he said, "Anyone who wants to follow me embraces pain, takes his cross, he does. You want to be safe, but you'll lose everything. You could gain the world, but what good would it do if it costs everything? But if you are ashamed of me, you'll find yourself shamed in the day of glory." And some of you are going to see that before you even die. Well, it was not that long later, and Jesus had James and I and John up on a mountain with him. And Jesus' clothes turned blazing white. Nobody can make clothes white like that. And 2 figures, Moses and Elijah, appeared. Well, I was stunned, and I spoke up and said, "Let's make 3 tabernacles for the 3 of you." But a voice just cried out from heaven, saying, "This is my Son, beloved. To him you must listen." And then everything returned to normal. And Jesus said we couldn't tell anyone until he had risen from the dead. We spent the whole way down the mountain wondering what on earth he meant by that. We said to him, "Why do the people say that Elijah has to come?" And Jesus just said, "Yeah, they're right. But he came already, and they did whatever they liked to him, just like the scripture says." Now, we came back to a brawl, for there was this kid that nobody could heal. And they were relieved to see us. They came and welcomed us. But Jesus just said, "What's the problem?" "The spirit keeps seizing my son, but your people, they can't heal him." Oh, faithless times. How long do I have to put up with this? Bring him here. Of course, the boy came in kicking and screaming like a madman. Jesus just said, "How long has it been?" "His whole life, from a child. If you can help him, even a little, if I can help, believe, and you can do anything." "Oh, I believe," the man said. Help my unbelief." Now there was a crowd building up quickly, so Jesus quickly said, "Come out now. Come out for good." And it did. But it threw the kid down like crazy. And the kid was sitting there like a stone. And the people said, "He's gone. He's dead." But Jesus just reached down, grabbed his hand, said, "Get up." And the boy, he got up. He was fine. Now later, Jesus told us this kind can only come out by pure prayer. So we were in Galilee. Jesus said, "The Son of Man will be killed, but he will rise again in 3 days." But it all sounded like gibberish to us. Now we were on a completely different page. And once Jesus asked us what it was we were talking about. And I'm ashamed to say it, but we were all up about who was the best one in our group. And Jesus, he just grabbed a little child and he said, "If a child is among you, it's like having me among you." Now later, we were upset because someone else was using Jesus' name like we do to try and heal people. But Jesus just said, "Don't stop him. He's on our side. But if someone causes a little one like this to stumble, he's better off thrown into the sea with a heavy stone tied around his neck." Now Jesus, he was always being challenged. And one time they challenged him about divorce, trying to use the laws of Moses. But Jesus just said, "Go back to the beginning and figure it out. God provided for Adam, and he said the two shall be one. And that is how it is. Why would you separate what God has joined?" But now when they kept bringing babies to Jesus, he just dropped what he was doing. And he said stuff like, "You got to be like this baby if you want to make it in." A rich man came to him once and said, "What do I have to do to live forever, good teacher?" And Jesus just said, "Good, eh? Only God is good." He insisted that the man follow the commands that he listed out. And Jesus said, "Okay then," because he said he'd follow them all. "Just sell everything you have and follow me so that you can be a real rich man." But the man wouldn't do it. He just turned away, sad. Jesus said to the rest of us, "It's harder for a camel to go through a needle than for a rich man to make it in." Now that 3rd year was tense. Jesus talked more and more about this need to suffer and even said something strange about us suffering too when James and John were asking him for this special place at his throne. It was actually their mother. It's a long story. But Jesus called himself a ransom for many. He was always saying these things we didn't understand at the time. Now on the way into Jerusalem, that 3rd year, there was this blind man who called Jesus the Son of David. And it really got his attention. He healed the man right there. He did, the blind man. It was amazing. But when we got closer into Jerusalem, Jesus said to us, "Go into Bethany, and there you're going to find a donkey, even a young colt, unridden. If anyone asks, just say, 'The Lord, he needs it.'" We did this. And there it was, just like he said, this donkey. We started to untie it, and someone came out to us and said, "What are you doing?" But they just let us take it when we said, "The Lord needs it." So Jesus rode into Jerusalem, and all of us started throwing down our cloaks, and it was like it started a reaction. The people began to do the same, and Jesus was riding over all these cloaks on the ground like a carpet, and everyone had gone to get palm branches, which had symbolism, and they started waving them around, and they were shouting, "Hosanna! The kingdom of David is back, and it is blessed." But we actually stayed in Bethany that night. We'd gone around and looked at the temple, and then we went to Bethany, not Jerusalem. Now the next morning, Jesus saw a fig tree outside of our lodge, but it didn't have fruit on it yet. It wasn't season, you see. But he cursed that tree. And we didn't have too much time to think about it at the time. We went straight into the town, and Jesus went right to the temple. But he started turning over tables, and all these people selling things. He was turning over their wares and saying, "This is a house of prayer for the nations. But you You have made it a den of robbers and thieves." When we went back to the lodge, the fig tree was withered. Now I noticed it first, and I said to Jesus, "How'd you do that?" And Jesus just said, "Have faith in God, Peter. If you have confidence, you can throw this whole mountain into the sea. Ask for anything, and you'll get it. But just be sure that you forgive everyone who wrongs you. This is the key." Now, the fallout from the little temple episode was big. They came to Jesus formally, and they said an appeal to him. They said, "Who told you that you could do this?" Jesus just said, "I'll tell you, if you'll tell me one thing. Who let John in the wilderness baptize people?" But he had them stumped. They couldn't figure it out, so they didn't say anything. And Jesus told them a story of this vineyard, that the owner kept sending servants to the vineyard. They kept beating them up, until finally the owner sent the son, but they killed him. Now we all knew Isaiah. I think it was pretty obvious that Jesus was talking about the prophets as the servants who went one by one, but Jesus was the Son. He was the cornerstone of that great priestly psalm. Now, there were other questions posed to Jesus about taxes, questions about the resurrection, and even about which commandment was the greatest one. But Jesus silenced them, all of them, and he even had a few questions of his own. Jesus said, "Who do you think David meant when he said, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand'? But everyone says the great prophet will be in David's lineage." In other words, David's son. Now how can someone be both a son and a master? Now when Jesus talked like this, people were delighted by it. Jesus said, "See the scribes, how they walk around? Just look at them. But they stomp on the homes of widows. And there was this woman who walked by, and she dropped a penny or two in the offering. And Jesus said, 'See her? She gave more than all of them, because she gave it all.'" Now, we didn't really pay attention. We were country folk, you see, and just kind of in awe of the whole place. The temple is enormous. But Jesus just said to us, "See these buildings? It's all coming down." We had to know the details. Jesus said one evening, "A lot more people will come and claim to be the one, the prophet, the Messiah. There will be all kinds of wars, famines, and earthquakes. Hold fast. You're going to go through a lot of hardships. Don't be anxious. Say what the Holy Spirit puts on your heart to say. You will be hated. I'm telling you now. Hold fast. For the last days of Daniel, run. Just run. Let anyone hear this message. Run. The stars on that day will fall from the sky, and angels will appear." Now you saw the fig tree, right? When the fig tree is ripe, you know what's coming. Just watch the signs. But nobody knows exactly what moment it's going to happen. You just have to stay alert. Now 2 days to Passover, and we were in a room in Bethany. And this woman came in, and she broke an alabaster jar, expensive. And she anointed Jesus as a gift. And we all just said, "Well, that was a waste. That would have fed a lot of people." But Jesus said, "Stop it. She's done something beautiful. You can feed the poor when I'm gone." He looked at her, and he said, "Do you realize this precious woman has just become a part of my story, and it will be told throughout the earth?" Now Judas hated stuff like this. He was the treasurer, see, and I think it was then that he was fed up. He wanted to turn Jesus in and just give up. He just needed an opportunity to get out. We didn't realize it. Again, Jesus sent us to prepare everything. And it was just as he said. Again, he said, "Just go and meet a man who's carrying a water jug in his hand." So, everything was done for us. And we were all reclining at the table. And Jesus just says, one of you will betray me. It shocked us. We all just said, not me, right? But Jesus said, it's the one who dips bread when I do. And I saw who it was, but I could hardly believe it. And Jesus said, woe to the betrayer. It's better for him had he not even been born. We were eating, and Jesus took bread, and he gave it to us. And after giving thanks, he broke it, and he said, my body, take, eat it. He took the cup, the special cup, and he held it up and said, the blood of the covenant, poured out for many, and I won't drink it again until I drink it new in the kingdom. We all went out that night to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus said, do you remember what the prophet said? I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. After this is fulfilled, meet me in Galilee. It all seemed so absurd. And I said, they may scatter, but I won't. But Jesus just said, before the night watch, the cock crow twice, you'll say 3 times that you don't even know me, Peter. I said, no, I would die for you. Everyone else was saying the same thing. Now that night, we went to a place we often went, a garden called Gethsemane. And Jesus just told us to pray. He said, keep watch, for my heart is full of sorrow. And we overheard him. He was shouting, wailing, begging the Father that his cup might be absolved. But he said, not my plan, but yours. To the Father he said it. Now we were pretty much asleep when he came back. And he shook me. He said, Simon, you're asleep. Can you not keep watch for 1 hour? But I know the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. All this happened 3 times. But the 3rd time, Jesus said, it's time. They're here. And there was Judas. And he had with him a mob. And he walked up to Jesus, and he greeted him. He said, Rabbi. And he kissed him. One of us struck the servant's ear. But Jesus said, what is this? You could have seized me at the temple. Swords, clubs. But the story has already been written, has it not? And as a young follower of Jesus was there, and they grabbed that young man, but he slipped out of his garment and got out of there, leaving the garment there in their hands. Now I did follow Jesus from a distance, and they dragged him to the city, Jerusalem, and they put Jesus in front of the priest. But I could only go so far as the fire where watchmen were sitting. And they were bringing all these charges against Jesus. Lies, really. Saying things about him rebuilding the temple, but exaggerating them. And finally, they couldn't come up with anything because everyone's sayings were conflicting one another. Someone said, are you the prophet, the Christ, the Messiah? And Jesus said, I am. And then Jesus said, you'll see the Son of Man at the right hand of power with the clouds. Well, that's what they were looking for. The high priest ripped his holy garment. He said, what else do we need? And they sentenced him to death, and they started right there abusing him. I was so distracted, but a girl, young, she was there by the fire, and she said, you're one of his servants, aren't you? I said, me? No. I wandered over to the gate, for I was disturbed, and when I was there, I heard a rooster crow. So, this girl was telling everyone, that man over there, he's with the Nazarene. And I said to the people who were approaching me, no, I don't understand what you're talking about. And they started to hone in on me. They said, your accent gives you away. You're a Galilean, like he is. But I started to curse them. I said, I don't know him. And the rooster crowed. At that moment, I was crushed, absolutely crushed. Well, by morning, they had gotten Jesus all the way to Pilate somehow. And the word is that Pilate had asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus had replied, "As you say." And Pilate said, "You make no appeal against this long list of charges that they have brought against you?" Well, there's this tradition. You may know it. One prisoner gets released at Passover. It's kind of a political thing. The people approached Pilate and said, "Again, do this thing." And Pilate took Jesus, and he set him on a pedestal at one side. Now he could see that the opposition was driven simply by jealousy. On the other side, he placed a killer who went by the name Bar-Abba. And he asked the people like this, "Would you like me to release the king of the Jews for you?" But the priest, the high priest, and the others had weighed in on the crowd, and they said, "Release Bar-Abbas." "Well, then what should I do with the king?" "Crucify him." "Why? Tell me what he has done." But they just kept saying, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" So he released the revolutionary, the killer, and he released Jesus to be crucified. Now the soldiers assembled a whole battalion, and they clothed Jesus in purple and put a crown of thorns on him, and they were mocking him and saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And Jesus was beat to no end until they sent him on his way. And climbing up the hill, they had to find someone. They found Simon the Cyrene, Alexander's son. And Simon helped Jesus to carry the cross until it was time. Jesus could go no further. He was so weak. They brought Jesus to Golgotha, which means the skull. And there they crucified him. They put him between two thieves, and it was the third hour. They divided his garments among themselves rather than tear them. And they offered Jesus wine, but he wouldn't drink it, as he had said to us. Now they always put the charge up on the cross. It's the Roman way. Whenever you crucify someone, you write what they have done. But Jesus' sign simply said, "King of the Jews." And they kept shouting for him to come down off the cross, mocking him. Now after 3 hours, it was the 6th hour, and it got dark, really dark. And after 3 more hours, Jesus shouted out the last thing. It was loud enough for us to hear. He said, "My God! My God! Why have you left me?" Some people thought that maybe Jesus was summoning the prophet Elijah. But alas, Elijah did not come. Jesus died. Now a temple curtain was rended, giving access into the holy place. And also there was this general of the battalion who was standing, and he watched the whole thing, and he saw the way that Jesus died. And he said to himself, "Surely this was the Son of God." Now there were some women who managed to get a bit closer, and they were women who had been with Jesus all along. And they were there. Pilate was surprised when he got the message that Jesus had died so quickly. For crucifixion was designed to kill slowly, you see. Pilate asked the centurion to verify it, and so he did. And when verification was brought, Pilate gave permission that Jesus could be taken down. Now Joseph, a wealthy man, had already offered his own tomb to place Jesus' body. And since Jesus was dead, they knew that if they acted fast enough, they could bury him by sundown, when preparation day began. Well, thankfully, Mary, who's called Magdalena, she had followed this party of people that buried Jesus. Otherwise, we might never have known the place. Well, the days of preparation and Sabbath were past. So she and Salome, along with James' mother, they brought spices to finish the job properly and anoint the body of Jesus. And they had been wondering all along the way, how are we going to remove the stone? Who's going to roll it away for us? For they were women. See, that stone was quite big. But when they got there, they saw that the stone had already been rolled away. They went inside and were startled because there was a man inside, and he was dressed in white. The man saw how startled they were. He said, "Don't fear. I know that you're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, the man who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen. Come and look, see? Look where they put him. You saw it, didn't you? Go and tell his disciples and Peter. He's gone ahead of you to Galilee. Don't you remember? He told you the whole plan." They left, trembling and totally speechless and unable to tell anyone for a while, completely overwhelmed. When Mary Magdalena finally told us, of course we didn't believe her. But after this, he came to a couple of disciples in disguise on the road, and they brought their story, but we didn't believe them. But when Jesus finally met all of us, it was at supper time, and he rebuked us for stubbornness. But Jesus said, "Go now to the world. Tell the good story to all creation. If someone believes, baptize them, for they shall live. The rest shall stand in judgment. And you, all of you, shall accomplish wonders, casting out demons, speaking in tongues, evading the bite of serpents, and even poison, not to mention the power to revive the sick." And Jesus was taken to heaven, finishing his work. He sat down at the right hand of God. But for the rest of us, the work begins. But the Lord, he goes with us, confirming every word. Confirming every word.